in the last 20 years, there has been more willingness amongst historians to think in terms of questions that people earlier wouldn't have discussed. Why do people believe what they do? Why do they have contradictory thoughts in their heads? How do we explain something of the psychology of these individuals? How do we think about religion, not just in terms of doctrine and theology, but in fact of the kind of embodied personal beliefs? How religion spills into action. So not just treating it as theology and not just treating it as sort of outward forms, but understanding what are the relations between us as human beings and our beliefs and our actions and what we think. I think historians have been much more open in the last couple of decades to asking those sorts of questions. And I think it's been extremely fruitful. I think it helps us to humanize the past. One of the biggest problems, and I see this with my students year after year, they're wonderfully curious and interested, but one of the big challenges they face is understanding that these figures, whether 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, were human. They weren't a different species. They were human. And if we're asking questions about why did they do or not do these things, well, we can't expect people in the past to be more consistent than we would expect ourselves to be. We live in a very different world. We live in the 21st century. We live in conceptually, physically, in all ways, we live in a very different world. But we're no more human than they were, and no less human than they were. And so all the fragilities and inconsistencies and qualities of being human have to be embraced if you're going to understand, even if you take the Reformation. The Reformation has to be seen as a very human event because it was enacted by human beings who could make terrible mistakes, who could do dreadful things, who could do amazing things, who were constantly faced with very much life and death questions. So it's not, the Reformation isn't just about abstract ideas. These people lived the consequences of what happened, and they died for what happened. And so one of the things that has most motivated is helping my students to understand the sheer humanity of these events.